Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I'd like to welcome you all to the OPPD Board of Directors meeting this month. Glad to have you here. I've got an interesting agenda. Hope you enjoy it. And Kim, would you begin?
Tim, did you want to give the safety briefing?
Yes, I'll go ahead and give the safety briefing. So, ladies and gentlemen, most of you came in two of the entrances. There's also two entrances on this end as well. But in the event we need to evacuate this building, we would actually go straight out through the cafeteria, out through the 17th Street side, so we don't have to navigate any steps. In the event we have to navigate and leave through the 16th Street side, we would ask you to use your three-point touch. That's one hand on the railing, 2 feet on the ground. The AD and the first aid kit is, as you go into the cafeteria area, it's on the brick wall, one on top of each other. There's a fire extinguisher right around this corner. There's a conference room right around this corner before you go through the double doors. There's a fire extinguisher on the right-hand side. There's one also in the kitchenette. Is anybody here certified in the use of an AED or in CPR? So obviously there's several folks within in the room that have that capability. Mark, would you call 911 in the event that we need it? I appreciate that. If you have a medical condition, please write it down or tell your neighbor. In the event of a tornado, we don't anticipate one on a blue sky day like today, but we would actually move to the west side of the building, to the garage area where it is secured. With that, there's no reason to use an elevator at this point in time, but in the event of a fire, we would not use the elevator. So any questions of the safety briefing at all? Seeing none.
Thank you, Tim. I might mention before Ms. Tracy takes the role that Director Hurley is excused for the meeting, so you will not see him today. Kim, would you call the roll, please?
Barrett?
Yes.
Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Gay? Green?
Yes.
McGuire?
Yes.
Mines?
Yes.
Ulrich?
Yes.
Agenda item number 3, notice of the time and place of this meeting was publicized by notifying the area news media, by publicizing same in the Omaha World Herald and outlets, by displaying such notice on the arcade level of the Energy Plaza since March 1st, 2016, and by mailing such notice to each of the district's directors on that same date. A copy of the proposed agenda for this meeting has been maintained on a current basis and is readily available for public inspection in the office of the district's corporate secretary. Additionally, a copy of the open meetings law is available for inspection in the public meeting book located in this meeting room. Agenda item number 4, approval of the January 2016 Comprehensive Financial and Operating Report, the February 11, 2016 Board Meeting Minutes, and the March 10th, 2016 agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Barrett?
Yes.
Hurley? Barrett, Kavanaugh?
Abstain.
Gay?
Yes.
Green?
Yes.
McGuire?
Yes.
Mines?
Yes.
Ulrich?
Yes.
Agenda item number 5, persons wishing to address the Board of Directors on a particular item are asked to approach the microphone as the agenda item is discussed. Comments will be heard following board discussion of the item and prior to a vote by the board. Persons wishing to address the board on all other matters will have an opportunity before the close of the meeting. Agenda item number 6, resolution number 6112. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Directors accepts the monitoring report for Strategic Directive SD14 Retirement Plan Funding substantially in the form as set forth on Exhibit A attached hereto and made a part hereof.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Director Green, would you, as
Mr.
finance
Easterlin, are we
chair?
going through this again? No? Okay. Board has reviewed a monitoring report on the status of the retirement plan funding. And as fiduciaries of that plan, we have visited with the Vice President and Treasurer, gone over it, made a determination, received information from the actuaries that says that the plan is as presently is adequately funded, though anything could always be better. And I wanted to remind everybody that our employees do not qualify for Social Security benefits, that they this pension is exactly what they receive, other than what contributions they and the district make towards a 401k or a 457 plan. So unless there are any other questions, I would ask that we approve this resolution.
Questions from the board?
I got comments. I know we discussed this Tuesday, but I think we should just have a public discussion a little bit about where we're at on it. The discount rate being 7.75. I know we're gonna take a look at that. Is that too high or whatever with the fixed income's been so flat for forever? So I know that's one of those things we talked about maybe looking at. And then, I brought it up and I want to bring it up at a public meeting. When we look at this, we're 72% funded or whatever. It's an ongoing plan, I know that. But to get it up, it needs to be both part of the employer and employee's responsibility, I think. Most people, I think, in this country have 401ks, things like that. They don't have a pension. A pension is a nice retirement plan, and it's a good thing. I'm not saying that. It's a security, nice way to save for retirement. I'm just saying that responsibility, much more like healthcare, is becoming, it's a partnership between the employer and the employees. But I want to put it out. It's our public meeting, and I know we discussed this at length Tuesday, and Edward did a great job, and we had a good discussion. But like I say, at this meeting, I do want to get it out there because I know people view that, and this is our public forum. So just wanted to add that for the record.
Yeah, it was not a good year for the stock market, is the bottom line, too. That hasn't helped us in the past few years. And because of that, we've had to fund the pension fund more. Our contributions are, maybe you can, what's our contributions?
Yeah,
Why don't you
if
give
I
us the
could
difference?
impose
I think
on
we
you,
should.
Edward, would you mind
if you
giving
could
us
give
an
us
overview?
a little bit of update. I
Maybe,
think it's worth it for the public.
Also
to
address
hear.
Director Gay's request.
Okay, I'm gonna try to touch the points here, so if I miss something, please let me know and I'll go back to it. The fund itself is a defined benefit fund, which means the employee earns a retirement benefit based on their years of service and their salary that they made during their tenure, and also the funds that they contribute into the fund. Today, employees contribute 6.2% of their pay as a contribution into the fund, and that is approximately 50% of the annual earned benefit for the retirement, or the benefit that's earned through the work of the employee. In other words, if we look in total, each year, or in 2015, the benefit earned by employees working was about $22 million. There's a liability of $22 million annually that needs to be paid from the fund. Now, the employees contribute half of that. The 6.2% contributes about $12 million. The company pays the balance. So it's about a 50-50 cost sharing based on the annual earned benefit. The challenge comes in that there's another piece of this, and that is the fund itself is invested, and there's expectation and there's calculations in the actuarial study that say we're going to earn additional income over time from our investments to help fund this liability in the future. And that is assumed to grow at 7.75%. In the last couple of years, we haven't achieved the 7.75%. Long term, we're very close to it. However, in the short term, that hasn't happened, and it has to do with market volatility and what's happened with the economy. You may say 7.75, that sounds really high, and how can you justify a 7.75% rate of return or discount rate? And it all comes back to what is the long-term expected return in the market for the investment portfolio that we have today in our investment policy. So we look at those different types of investments. We use the input from our investment advisor, which is Siegel Rogers Casey, on what their view of the market is going forward. We put that together for each of those asset classes, and it tells us that 7.75 is a reasonable expectation over the long term. Over the short term, no. Over the long term, yes. And not only do we get an opinion from Siegel Rogers Casey, but it's also reviewed by the actuary, which would be Aon Hewitt, and it's also reviewed and validated by our external auditor, Deloitte. So we have three people who look at this and basically either agree or express a concern. We recognize that 7.75 is on the higher end of expectations for return going forward. For that reason, we're looking at doing an asset liability study, and we have already initiated the study. We talked about that last year. We said we would look at it in 2016. We have the study underway today. We don't have a result because we're doing a lot of risk assessments with different types of investments to look at, number one, what is the expected return? What is the risk of that return? And what are the correlations between those? Because what we're really trying to do is come up with a return, as high as we can get with an acceptable level of risk. And so that is the exercise, is looking at stochastics. What is the probability of different returns and the impact on the portfolio? So with that, please let me know if I missed anything.
No, on the shortfall, the reason that we have to contribute because the investments underperformed,
Right.
and we just simply need to get back up to that level to continue funding the plan.
Correct. And so in 2016, we're projected to put about $54 million into the fund. $22 million is the earned benefit from the employee's actual earned benefit from the prior year. The balance is to make up for the market losses that occurred over the prior period and to get us back to a fully funded status within the actuarial period, which is 20 years.
Yeah, and that's all I'm saying. This is, we stream these, we try to be publicly out there, whatever. That's all I'm saying. I thought we did a good job looking at it. We did. On a Tuesday pre-committee meeting, we had a great discussion. Rogers, Casey, Siegel came in. We asked these same questions on Tuesday, but I just wanted to get it out there. It's a living document. You're gonna have your ups and downs and, whatever. We're not gonna cash it out all at once. But anyway, I just wanted it out there. You did probably more than I needed on an explanation, but very good.
Okay.
I appreciate the
It's on our
explanation.
radar.
I think for everyone here, it's a very good explanation.
Exactly. Thank you.
Thank you.
On a pension plan like ours, it's a defined benefit plan. You want to make sure it's adequately funded and not overly funded, because if you overfund it, then the rates would have to go up substantially in order to do that. So there's a balance in there. And when the market tanked in like 2008, we started increasing our contributions to the plan in order to maintain its level of viability and acceptability according to our regulations within the district. And we were better off than a lot of others because we were able to manage that and to provide that money in there. Municipalities and counties and school districts that had defined benefit plans weren't able to raise any additional taxes to cover that. So that those plans, when you read about them all being in trouble and everything, it's a market fluctuation. That if the market comes back, they're fine. If the market doesn't come back, they're going to have to increase their contributions to it. Mr. Easterland, how long have we used AON Hewitt as our actuaries?
It predates my tenure with OPPD, so the specific time period, I'll ask Mr. Thurber.
No, you don't have to. That's
Okay.
long enough.
They've been with us for quite some time.
One other point
Different
that-
names, of course, through mergers. Sure. But
Yeah. One other point that should be made is that all new employees are not on the defined benefit plan. Since 2008, it's a cash benefit, is that correct? Or
well, we
What year
offered a
was that?
cash benefit plan as an optional plan for employees, I want to say in 2011?
11, what year was that?
2008, okay.
I thought it was
And then in
2008.
2013, all new employees went into the cash balance plan.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Edward.
Board, any other questions?
Edward, I just had a quick question on the phase that we're in on a level of a scale of yellow, red, a danger. How scary is it?
I would, if you're asking me to pick colors, I would pick a yellow.
Okay.
I would just pick yellow, not from an employee standpoint, but from a company funding standpoint. So I think, from an employee being an employee, I'm confident that the benefit will be there when employees are expected to draw upon the plan. I'm concerned about what the future market and the economy is going to be globally because that's an uncontrollable for us.
Yeah.
And from that standpoint, I'm concerned that the contributions in the future could be greater if we continue to see economic instability and volatility in the financial markets. So to me, the yellow would be associated with market returns.
Okay.
And then the increased funding required.
And this is a snapshot in time. I mean,
That is
throughout
correct.
the years, you're going to ebb and flow, and we still have that obligation to our employees.
Right.
Yes.
And we will continue to maintain that.
Right.
Okay.
See, and what we've been working with and trying to fix that others can't is that when the market goes down and the value of the plan goes down, you have to do two things. One, you have to put in additional money to bring that up. Plus, you have to put in additional monies to make up for what you would have earned otherwise. So you have a double problem there that international markets could just control themselves for a while.
Would be nice.
Well, they're up today.
It's up today.
You can't chase the market. You can't panic every month.
Well, and
You
we
have to think
smooth
long.
it out over a 20-year period of time. I think that's
That's the
we
big- yeah,
smooth
right.
both gains and losses over a 20-year period of time, not to do the knee-jerk reaction where you have to fund 50% more or 50% less. And so our plan is to get some stability in how we support and fund the plan, so we're not doing the knee-jerk reactions. And so we've looked at leveling that over a 20-year period of time, and obviously we've talked to the board last year as we were moving into that 20-year kind of leveling off period for both ups and downs in the fund.
There is one other item I'd like to mention that probably isn't all that obvious on the surface. We talk about the financial markets, but another factor, key factor in this that I have seen play a role in the funding level in the last, I would say, 5 to 7 years is the increasing mortality tables. The good news is people are living longer. The challenge with people living longer is the retirement liabilities go up, and because of that, the funding requirements increase. And so that's also a factor in this. It's, it's not identified here, but I've seen it firsthand through the actuarial calculations. It is material.
You know, when this plan was set up, nobody anticipated that people would be retired for a longer period of time than they worked.
Exactly.
Thank you, Edward. Anything else? That's true. Any comments or questions from the public? Please state your name and your address, please.
Jeffrey Picorni, 4969 South 149 Court. Question for Mr. Easterlin, if you'd permit it. If in fact the market goes down to 666, the S&P valuation to 666, which is about a third of where it is today, what happens to all your figures and computations,
Okay.
plans?
Well, obviously, I'm not prepared to give you a precise answer.
Well, generally,
I would tell you that the value of the portfolio would decrease. However, I will tell you that we're very diversified in the portfolio, and only about 35%, if I'm not mistaken, is in U.S. equities. So we have 45% in fixed income, which would not see that decline. And then we have foreign investments also. So S&P, yes, it would have an impact on a portion of our portfolio. If it occurred across all markets, then that's a different story. But we're very diversified.
then a follow-up question is, if in fact you're invested in foreign markets, is that wise policy? And would the board, and I guess you're agreeing to that because you are agreeing to the general plan, but is that a wise decision on your part to be invested in a foreign market where you have no controls whatsoever and less feeling?
One word answer is yes.
Yes.
And I'd
Yes,
call the question.
is yes to what?
Okay.
That being in all those markets is good for the plan and the district, because you have to be diversified around between fixed assets and equities. And
Equities.
equities, between different levels of equities, small cap, medium cap, value, large cap. And then the overseas markets, there are about 6 or 7 different categories that we would participate in. The foreign bond markets, the foreign equity markets, the emerging markets, all of those different factors have different risk values associated with them and gain values associated with them. And they're all monitored by Aon Hewitt.
And Siegels Casey.
They are who determine how our managers are doing. We hire the best managers in the country to come in and do this. We put an extremely high mark for them to make in order to remain as a stakeholder in handling our money. And they've been assigned certain portfolios. So the pension committee will meet, get the recommendation from Aon Hewitt, they'll get a recommendation both on what they should be engaging in and who they should hire. And a certain amount of money is allocated for that specific purpose. And when we get the reports back quarterly, we know quarterly how things are going and how the people who are managing our money are doing. So the short answer to your question is yes. We are monitoring it. We are doing our fiduciary responsibility, and being in the foreign markets is absolutely the correct thing to do.
Mr. Gay, you mentioned a pre-committee meeting that you had with the powers to be, the advisors. Was that before the committee meeting at 8:30 yesterday?
No, sir. That was
a public meeting.
it's a public hearing on Tuesday
No,
at 8:30.
my question is to Mr. Gay. He said
No,
pre-committee meeting.
I am the chair, Mr. Picorni. You will
Okay,
direct it to
can I
the
ask a
chair.
question of Mr. Gay?
No, sir. You may direct it to the chair, and then we can choose to answer. That's protocol.
He
Sorry.
mentioned a pre-committee meeting, and that's what I'm trying to get is the semantics. Was it before the committee meetings yesterday?
No, we had a public
It wasn't a
meeting
pre-committee meeting. It was just a committee meeting.
Tuesday morning, every Tuesday
meeting before
prior
that.
to this, we have a public
I'm
meeting.
just trying to clarify if it was done
Yes, it's Tuesday, okay?
before.
Yes.
Okay.
Call
The thing
the
is,
question.
this is one of the most complicated things that the board does, is investing in the pension funds.
We agree.
And there's many ways of doing it. And you've got financial experts in Omaha, which are not usually appreciated across the country, starting with Mr. Buffett and going down to Mr. White's. And I mean, there's a bunch of them. And to go to New York City to do this may be not the best course. That's just my outlook after 45 years of investing.
Thank you.
And
Appreciate your
the
comment.
thing is, the proof of the pudding
Cut it.
is this chart. This chart. If this wasn't so important, I wouldn't mind sitting down. But this is really important. And I don't know how many employees we've got out here that are vested in this fund and going to rely on it. Like you said, no Social Security benefits.
Sir, we understand that it's vital to this organization and vital to our employees. This is not taken lightly. We appreciate your comment, but we're going to move on.
In the last-
You're welcome to speak to Mr. Earlywine.
I don't know how much
Or you
time
can
I have
switch to the
allotted, but
camera.
Mr. Green took most of it. The thing is, what I'm saying today is that you've got people who don't have Social Security, and they may not have other investments. The problem is that this is the problem, right
Sir.
here. And I don't
Okay,
know if
you're
you
done.
appreciate it as a board.
You're done, Mr. Picorni. You're welcome to come up at the next time and talk to the next issue, but we've
How much-
heard
let
you.
me- How's this? How much time do I have? What's the
Has
rule
heard
now?
you.
What's
Thank
the rule?
you.
What's the rule? How much time do I have?
3 minutes.
3 minutes.
Thank you.
I'll put a stopwatch on it next time.
Thank you. Any other comments? Seeing none. Oh, I'm sorry. Please come forward.
Tom Mulligan, 12311 Charles Street. And I apologize, I should have sat on this side of the room. But I just have a quick comment, and I've got a question. The 7.75 seems like a very reasonable goal, particularly if that's what you've been able to accomplish over long term, and these are long-term investments. So, I mean, that sounds very reasonable to me. My question is this, what is the balance of the pension fund? And what percentage is it underfunded?
Edward, do you have a
Got it right here. It's in the paper.
good question?
I believe the fund balance is $870 million at the end of 2015, which was slightly down from where we were at the beginning of the year. And at a funding level, I think we're very close to 72% funded.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions? Thank you, Edward.
Hey, Nick, I appreciate the public comment. I think That's great. That's why we're having the discussion here. We've looked at this very closely, as is the financial services business for 15 years, managed pensions and things before. We've done, not saying I'm an expert, but we've done a great job, I think, looking at this and continue to look at it. That's all I wanted to get across when I wanted to bring this up to a public. But it is important for employees and everyone else to see
Absolutely.
and where we're at, so.
Thank you. Anyone else?
And I might say, this is part of the strategic directive that the board's given the management team to be responsible for and come back and report on the progress of our pension plans and our health plans over the course of the year. And this is just an example of that open dialogue that we're having. The public can see what those strategic directives are, what that plan is, and this is just those opportunities that we have in the public to essentially report the specifics of that.
And the strategic directives are online and can be viewed at any time.
All right, seeing nothing else, call the roll, please.
Barrett,
Yes.
Kavanaugh,
Yes.
Gay, Green,
Yes.
McGuire,
Yes.
Mines,
Yes.
Ulrich.
Yes.
Motion carried. Agenda item number 7, resolution number 6113. Now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Directors of the Omaha Public Power District that the proposal of Watts Electric Company in the amount of $541,525.58 to procure electrical equipment labor for an addition to substation 3458 is the lowest and best bid received on request for proposal number 4892 and is hereby accepted, and the bond of such bidder is hereby approved.
So moved.
Second. Motion second.
Mr. Chairman, first of all, I apologize for my cranky voice, but I've been battling bronchitis for a while. But as you know, we're part of the Midwest Transmission Project through our participation with Southwest Power Pool. And as part of that, we're in charge of the construction in the Nebraska side of the river. This is the kind of the beginning of the whole transmission line. This is where it's going to hook in to our Nebraska City substation. And of course, we require additional equipment and facilities to do that, places for the wires to hook up, et cetera. And due to the criticality of this time frame, when it has to, as you can see in our notes here, it starts on April and ends in August. We felt in our workload of our in-house employees who are perfectly capable of doing this, but we, in the interest of getting this done and not interrupting their summer work schedule, we felt it wise to bid this out. This is for labor only, and it's to construct certain various electrical equipment at our Nebraska City substation. And I would recommend its approval. By the way, it's just a little over the government engineer's estimate, but it's very competitive bids, and it's a local firm from Waverly. We have good experience with.
This is the same firm that we had last month, too, that we voted on for that.
Any other comments? Questions from the audience? Seeing none, please call the roll, Ms. Tracy.
Barrett,
Yes.
Kavanaugh,
Yes.
Gay, Green,
Yes.
McGuire.
Yes.
Mines.
Yes.
Ulrich.
Yes.
Motion carried. Agenda item number 8, resolution number 6114. Now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Directors of the Omaha Public Power District that the revision to Board Policy SD12, Information Management and Security, be and hereby is approved effective February 11, 2016, as set forth on Exhibit A attached hereto.
So move.
Second.
Yeah, this has to do with our strategic directive, information management and security. When Kate Brown was our new vice president of IT, was reviewing the SD, which she should, she questioned the fact of whether or not, why it was going to be monitored on an quarterly basis versus an annual basis. And her recommendation is that we monitor it on an annual basis because a lot of the stuff would be totally repetitive. I think we have her belief that she will come to us if there's any change, obviously, or anything like that. You know, any changes or anything that's coming up that we're not only going to hear from Kate Brown once a year, I guess is what I want to say. But this as far as actually doing the review of the policy.
Thoughts, questions?
I have something here. I should have raised this on Tuesday, but I didn't realize it until last night looking at the materials. Under the clause dealing with customer privacy, in the overwhelming majority of the time, with rare exception, that we should certainly protect the privacy of our customer owner ratepayers. However, there are potential exceptions that might arise, and I'm concerned that this policy might hinder those. Exception might be a very extreme criminal investigation, perhaps, where we would not be able to aid law enforcement with that needed material. I realize law enforcement or whoever else could always go ahead and try to get a court order. But of course, we would then have the obligation to defend our policy by probably appealing that court order. In any event, it would tie things up for a long time. Not to compare it at all to the situation in San Bernardino with Apple and the FBI and stuff. That's just a carnival what's going on there. But I would hate to create this policy and not be able to assist if needed. Again, I want to reiterate, with very rare exception, would we ever need to release this information, but I can see the potential.
Yeah, well, the value of these policies are that we can't change them. Right now, this board item is simply to state to just move it to an annual basis. However, we can, as a board, direct Ms. Brown to look at this and to come back with it for us as far as revision.
And I don't want to get, it'd be with rare exception. I just want us to have that ability if the situation would arise.
Director Kavanaugh, I would just share our practice specifically with law enforcement, whether that would be local law enforcement, the FBI, DEA, whoever that may be, is that if we do get a court order, we do release information to those law enforcement agencies, but we do require them to provide us a court order. And so we have an internal policy that's driven to that. We just don't release publicly without that specific legal requirement that we're required by the courts to release that information. So I think we're essentially complying with it in the manner in which you're suggesting, is that we do it and actually partner very closely with law enforcement agencies on a number, and all agencies across the state actually, on a number of different things. But in that case, we do require them to provide a subpoena for us to provide customer information.
And actually, the board policy does state it needs customer privacy except as provided by law.
Well, what does law
Yeah.
mean? Well, law would be a
Yeah.
court order or a statute that would supersede this, but that's all.
At any rate, to be continued on that discussion, I think, But right now, what we're voting on, just to make it clear, is just whether or not that we go to a yearly review of this.
The board, she reviews it every minute of every day,
Yeah,
all the time.
the board, yeah.
through On a security, and so.
Right.
This is just
Yeah.
a board report, that we get the full below report.
Okay, thank you. Any comments from the audience? Mr. Picorni?
Jeffrey Picorni again. As I see it, your two biggest threats to OPPD are internally the pension fund and externally hackers in general. And I would think that you would have this on a monthly basis rather than going to an annual basis. I would think you'd want your computer people, your IT people to come in. I don't know how well-versed the board is. I'm 72 and most of you are younger than that, but my generation is not as adept at computer and technology and hacking as my grandson is. And from what I read in the papers and what I read in my books is this is the main problem that corporations face, private corporations face today. And I would think the same would go for you, and utilities are under a different kind of attack and a different kind of vulnerability. Like I say, I would recommend that she comes in monthly rather than annually.
Well, excuse me, it's not that she would come in whenever she needs it. This is actually the policy and what we are looking at each year. It's not that she doesn't come in, as frequently as needed.
I'm only talking about what I can read here and what you've discussed today.
We're just
And-
talking
and
about the
secondly-
policy statement.
And secondly, the biggest threat that you have to your investment fund is zero interest rates or negative interest rates. And you've all got to be aware of that. That's the prime topic of conversation. And it's coming in Denmark, Sweden.
This off topic.
He's got 3 minutes.
This is general comments, isn't it? At any rate, this.
About this item.
No, but
Then I'll sit down and wait till general comments.
Okay.
But that's their second biggest area, is zero or negative interest rates. 7.75 is your target rate. That's a long ways away from 0 or -1 in Japan. It's really, those are the two biggest threats I see. as an outsider here, sitting here, listening to your discussions. I would love to be in the internal workings of the board to see how you're working with this, but those are really the two issues. You have great service. My electricity goes on every day. It never fails. And when the line blew out in my backyard last summer, the electricity came back on in 3 hours. It blew out right in my backyard. Huge explosion. You've got great service, but you've got these two big problems. They're the elephants in the room. Not just one elephant, but two, as I see it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Barrett,
Yes.
Kavanaugh,
Yes.
Gay,
Yes.
Green,
Yes.
McGuire.
Yes.
Mines.
Yes.
Ulrich. Motion carried.
Okay, Mr. Quirk, have you got a state of the utility for us?
I do. Just a little update for the month of February. Obviously, I'll start from our generation side and move to our employee side of the business. But what we've seen over the last month is our coal inventory has increased throughout the month, primarily due to low consumption of coal. And that's primarily due to pretty soft market conditions where we have seen prices actually in the negative dollar ranges over the course of the last month or so, which is really unique. But it's relatively low demand and a lot of energy in the marketplace. Matter of fact, we had days within SPP where 45% of the energy supplied in SPP came from renewable sources, primarily wind. So it was really unique to see that significant increase within the SPP market. We'll talk a little bit about that, how that relates to our retail load in just a second here. We're spending a lot of time actually working on North Omaha units 1 through 3. The board heard a presentation yesterday about how we're trying to separate some coal handling relative to units 1, 2, and 3 from 4 and 5 at North Omaha. But we are preparing both units 4 and 5 and Nebraska City 1 relative to the mercury and air toxic standards rule that go into effect on April 16th. So that work is continuing, the testing is continuing, and everything seems to be going well. So our production operations and engineering group is doing a great job preparing those units for this new regulatory rule and in place. And happy to say we have taken the 45 individuals that would have, or 48 individuals that would have been impacted, and we've essentially absorbed them through the rest of the organization through attrition and through other kinds of means throughout the organization. So it's a pretty good work between our HR group and our production operations group, and actually other parts of the organization to absorb the employees that would have been impacted by the closing of units 1 through 3, and certainly working very closely with the unions as well and the union leadership on that. We really appreciate that. It's a very cooperative effort and a pretty significant deal for us here at OPPD. So anyway, we'll be compliant and ready to go into effect. We'll be releasing and probably sending the board in the next couple days the timing of when each of those units will actually come offline. And I've just seen kind of the final information from John Hanson earlier this morning. So that work continues, but great work in our production operations group in preparation for those new rules. For the month of February, renewable energy contributed 18.7% of OPPD's retail energy sales. Capacity factor for renewables was 51%. Wind factor was 50.8%. What drives that is our landfill gas is a very, very high capacity factor generation. Year to date, just through the 2 months, January and February, renewable energy contributed to 17.9% of our retail energy sales. Capacity factor was around 50.1%. And so operations continue. Operations continue on our Grand Prairie to be online by the end of 2016. That'll be another 400 megawatts of wind. So we continue down that path that we've talked to the board in 2014 and our future generation plan. So those things that we've committed to are coming to fruition. And we'll be reporting on that over the next several months as well. We also have had a long, proud reliability record, and Mr. McCorney pointed that out, and our commitment to not only reliability but service. And the example would be, we just had an audit by the MRO, which is the Midwest Reliability Organization, really part of the North American Electric Reliability Corporation, and it was really focusing on cybersecurity. And I want to let you know that we get that deep audit every 3 years. We came through that audit with no findings. at all. So it was a very significant commitment of all of our teams, from IT to our T&D operations group, to come through that audit with no findings. And it's really the first time that we've been through that detailed kind of cybersecurity related audit to the level that the North American Electric Reliability Council is going through with all utilities across the regions. This is about over a 90-day period. We provided this organization with a significant amount of information, and then obviously they spent multiple days with us kind of reviewing all of our operations and all of our records and all the work that we're doing. So it's just a great commitment to our employees, but also it's a great message to our customers as well about our commitment to cybersecurity, about our commitment to reliability and customer service, and this just reaffirms the work that we're doing in that regard. Due to some of the favorable interest rates, so it may negatively impact us on some of the items that we talked about previously, but it does help us in other areas where we've looked at refinancing some bonds. We sold $104 million of Nebraska City 2 separate electric system revenue bonds on March 2nd at an interest rate of approximately 4%. It refunded a portion of the 2006 Series A separation system debt, and it'll provide about a $10 million net present value interest savings over the next 30-plus years. And so that's pretty significant. Now, what's important about this, we did this on behalf of our Nebraska City 2 participants, and it will not directly impact the district, but it will certainly help our participants with that. But all of our costs to do this work was essentially covered by the participants of Nebraska City 2. Kind of on the employee side of the business, it's been a kind of a busy month for us. We've had our National Engineers Week. Obviously, we have our OPPD Society of Engineers that did a variety of different things. They celebrated the 65th National Energy Week. It's called E-Week here at OPPD. And E-Week is dedicated to ensuring a diverse and well-educated future engineering workforce by increasing understanding and interest in engineering and a variety of technological careers. And obviously, we do a lot of support within the community to help build that talent and that skill and educational curriculum in support of that. We did a variety of different things. We had a lunch and learn with a major national engineering design company that looked and provided feedback on some of the work that they were doing on the California high-speed railroad project, right? So it's an opportunity for us and our employees to hear some of that, which may impact us in the future here in Omaha as well. And then we worked very closely with a variety of fifth grade students on the Marshmallow Challenge. And so our engineers were actively involved in the community trying to build the tallest, steadiest tower made of uncooked spaghetti, masking tape, string, and full-size marshmallows. So, but it's a great way for our mentoring of our engineers in the community with fifth grade students. It's just our commitment to the community that we have. We've also celebrated Black History Month. Obviously, as we've talked with the board, we've essentially rejuvenated and started back up our African American network that started in January 26th of 2016. And so the month of February was really to celebrate Black History Month. There was a variety of things that occurred, including a lunch and learn from the Tuskegee Airmen that occurred over a lunch hour. We also had an individual from Blue Cross Blue Shield that was an expert in marketing and organizational development that came to present to not only our African American network employees, but all employees at OPPD. They all had the opportunity to attend during that lunchtime presentation. And as we've done over the course of the last several months, we talk about from a safety perspective, even though OPPD had one of the safest years in the company's history, we have still not hit our best-in-class mark, but we're working through that. But I've always talked about employees that have died in the line of duty, and the individual I will talk about today is Michael G. Toms. He was an electrician. He died on July 10th, 1974. He was electrocuted while working on a transformer near Elmwood, Nebraska. He was 29 years old, had been with OPPD for 5 years. At the time of his death, he was also a veteran of the United States military. He was survived by his parents, grandparents, and his sister. And these are just great reminders, and our employees get an opportunity to see this as well. It's a great reminder of the work that we do and the focus that we have on safety here at OPPD, not only for our employees, but also for our customer owners as well. So with that, that concludes my State of the Utility report.
Thank you, Mr. Burke. Any other comments before we open it to the public? This is your opportunity to speak and remind you, please announce your name and your address. And it's a 3-minute maximum.
Hello. David Corbin, 1002 North 49th Street. I have 2 questions. Last month, John Pollock asked to have a monthly report on the number of shutoffs so that we would know, particularly as you're transitioning into the increased fixed rates, so that we will be able to compare and see. And so I would like to know if that's been started, and if it has, where we would find it. The second is, did this, as OPPD, I haven't seen in the paper, where OPPD engage in conversations with the mayor about the proposal to have more methane at the current landfill, because I've heard in previous meetings that wasn't something that was possible. So I would just like it.
I can answer that since I was in on the beginning of the waste
Landfill.
to energy project. What was discussed was that we can't solve their problem at Hefflinger Park because we don't know where the methane is and we don't know how much is there. At the current landfill in Elk City, we laid pipes out ahead of time so that the methane could be captured and then sent over to the plant. If the mayor's goal is to increase methane production at their at the county's facility, then we'd have to measure it and mark it and see if there's a payback factor in adding on to the unit that's out there.
So then, was this past discussion, or has anything happened recently?
This is a past discussion.
Yeah, but
I've done nothing since she's announced this on Tuesday.
Yeah, I would share with you, we've had the opportunity to have the mayor and some of their staff tour our landfill gas project at Elk City, and so obviously we stay in contact with them on a number of different opportunities, and so we'll continue to have that discussion and dialogue of what that looks like. You know, our landfill gas project is, as I've said before, is a high capacity, 95+% capacity factor project that takes the methane that's generated from the landfill. And obviously, I think the mayor's conversation in the paper was, if you put more grass clippings in there, it'll create more methane, you can use it for generation. And so certainly we'll work through that and look for options that it makes sense. And as we say, it's at the pace of value for OPPD and its customer owners. So we'll look at those options as they present themselves.
Could you also address the?
Yeah, so we're obviously working with and provided to a variety of the agencies some of the information on our collections process and our procedures and all those kinds of things. We haven't made a determination about whether we're going to include that in our State of the Utility report or not, but we'll certainly work with our agencies that support our customers in providing that information. So we're continuing evaluating what we want to do in this meeting and in this way. So it may be some of the things that we end up doing through kind of an annual report to the board, as we've done each year on credit collections and support of our energy assistance program. So,
But in response to earlier, you said you would monitor the effects of your fixed rate increase. Sure. And that would be one of the major things, in my opinion, that needs to be monitored.
Sure, that's one of the things we did. We had a presentation by Julie Comstock on Tuesday that talked a little bit about the process that we're going through and how we will kind of measure those kinds of opportunities. We'll probably plan on presenting that next month here at the board meeting and have that opportunity then to talk about it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Any other questions or comments? Morning.
Good morning. I'm Dr. Scott Williams, 312 South 16th Street, right here in Omaha, next door. And I appreciate the time to talk to you this morning. There are 2 things I wanted to mention or sort of repeat. One was actually just what you had said right now. I wasn't able to attend on Tuesday, so I'm looking forward to potentially hearing more about the rate restructure implementation because this is now the 3rd month since that policy was implemented. And so I'm looking forward to hearing about the low-income program in particular and the ways that that program is going to be implemented. The details were fairly scant in November and December in particular about how the low-income program is going to be implemented. And now with only just 3 months before that goes into effect, I think the public would like the opportunity to know what to expect. So I look forward to that, I guess, at next month's meeting. The other thing I wanted to bring forward was in December, you also looked at the scheduling of the public meetings for the publicly elected board of directors. And with the exception of Director Barrett, the 7 of you said it would be inconvenient to move the meeting to another time. I'd like to encourage you to relook at that policy. I'd like to encourage you to think about when you might be able to have more engagement from the public, because this is a public power district in the nation's only all public power state, and this is a public and open meeting. And as you'll notice, only a very few of us are actually able to attend on Thursday mornings in the middle of the workday. And I'd like you to look at a policy that might be able to reevaluate when you might be able to get the best public engagement for these meetings. I know that it's inconvenient for you. It's also inconvenient for us, except that you are elected or paid to be here, and we have to take time away from our jobs in order to come to this meeting. And so I'd like you to reevaluate that policy and maybe take another consideration about when you might be able to better engage the public. Only in the very rare circumstance of, for instance, increasing the fixed fees on your ratepayers, are public able to actually fill this room. Because when it's important, the public will turn out. But that means that we have to skip our jobs, miss our meetings, find daycare for our kids. We have to rearrange our schedules, our lectures, whatever it is that we have, that we do, has to be set aside so that we can engage in our public meetings of the publicly elected directors of our public power district. And I'd like you to reevaluate that policy and find out if there's a better way to engage the public for these meetings. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Seeing none, that will adjourn our meeting for today. Thank you all for coming.